Welcome to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. My name is Bornancin, a serial salesperson and entrepreneur, and I'm sitting down with the world's best sales experts to share their top secrets to sales success. Hello and welcome to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. And I'm thrilled, honored, humbled, and grateful to have with me today my good friend, Jaime Shanks. Jaime is the CEO of Sales for Life, one of the world's largest social selling training programs for enterprise companies and mid-market companies globally. Jaime is a world-leading social selling expert and author of two best-selling books, Social Selling Mastery, which is #1 on Amazon's hot new releases in sales, and his newest book, Spear Selling, which was just released, and we're actually featured in it. We're thrilled to talk more about the book. Jaime is a true pioneer in this space of digital sales transformation. He has trained over 300 plus companies, 100,000 sales and marketing professionals around the world with clients such as Microsoft, Sprint, Oracle, many others. The CEO of the leading social selling management, consulting, and training company in the world. Jaime, thank you so much for joining us today.
Wow, now that is an introduction. That is fantastic.
Yeah, man. So I'm thrilled to chat because, I remember I started working on my company's like idea when you went all in with Sales for Life and you quit your professional sales job. And I remember we were brainstorming God, it feels like a decade ago about how you were going to launch Sales for Life. And, I'm really excited. The audience is dying to know, two main things on this show. #1, sales secrets from the top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. What is your #1 top sales secret? If you had to go back in time to when you first started in selling, what is that #1 top secret? But before you share it, the audience is also dying to know, which we're going to start with. Who is Jaime Shanks, man? Where are you from? How'd you get started in sales? And then let's go through all the places that you worked in sales and everything that you learned along the way, which we call micro secrets. So without further ado, my man, I'd love to just learn about, who you are, where you came from, and how you got started in sales.
Fantastic. So I'm a boy born in the mountains of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. My father's a geologist in the oil patch working at Chevron. My mom was a neonatal nurse. And as a young kid, we moved to Ottawa, Canada, the capital of Canada. And my father left the oil patch to work at the National Energy Board and then eventually Energy Mines and Resources. So I have both parents are federal employees. So there's not an entrepreneur in my immediate business. My grandfather owned a chain of pharmacies, independent pharmacies, in small towns in Ontario, Canada.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
As a kid,
I don't even know how do you even get started with owning pharmacies?
So he was in the military, and he was about to be deployed in 1945. He was a fighter pilot, and the war ended. And in the Canadian Army at the time was free education. So he and his brother left and went to University of Toronto. They wanted to become doctors, but the class was filled. So they were running around campus trying to find anything that was remotely medical. And the pharmaceutical team needed students. And so became a pharmacist and then opened up a chain of pharmacies.
That's crazy.
So I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family, but I came from a family that was completely supportive of anything I wanted to do, any sport, any activity. There was never a no. My backyard growing up was actually the Rideau River. The Rideau River connects. It was built as a military canal for the Canadians to fight the Americans in the War of 1812 to get troops from the capital of Canada, Ottawa, called Bytown then, through the St. Lawrence River to protect Canada. So I grew up on this river. So every day coming home from school, I played hockey on the river with my brother. I fished in the summer every day. So I had this, and I had a cottage on a lake down the way. So I grew up very experiencing anything I wanted and never heard a no kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. That's a micro secret. I feel like, a lot of successful people that we interview, the people that are empowered when they're young to never, you could do anything you want. I feel that keeps your mind open to being able to take risks and go for these different goals and dreams. Yeah.
100%. And it made me, or what it did is it built my self-confidence. And throughout my life, I've had very confident moments and very non-confident moments, but I could at least reflect, and I have felt the high of feeling very confident. And I had classmates, and you'd feel sorry for the kids in your class that you could tell they've never experienced feeling confident. And so they only ever see the dark side of life. And that wasn't me, right? I got the opportunities to try new things. So anyways, long and the short, my first entrepreneurial experience, my first business, I'm a week into having my driver's license, and I don't really have a summer job that summer. My father was on an offshore oil rig off George's Bank, off of Newfoundland. And I took his Jeep, and I had the rugby team in the Jeep. We were, being stupid.
By the way, I heard the seafood by Newfoundland is like to die for, the best.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
I gotta go.
Newfoundland is, they're the weirdest of Canadians, but it's supposed to be. I've never even been there, so
yeah. Okay, so you're in the Jeep. Keep going.
I'm in the Jeep. I roll it into a ditch, and the rugby team flips it back on its wheels. I bring it home, put it in the garage, and my mom's stunned. And so she calls the satellite phone my father's on this offshore oil rig. And, in broken radio sound, you can see, be home 2 Tuesdays from now. And instead of coming home and tanning my ass, what he did was he came home, and there was a brown 1978 Chevy half-ton sitting in the driveway with 2 lawnmowers and a whippersnapper in the back. And he said, "You'll never, ever drive my vehicles again." And to this day, I'm a 40-year-old man. He has a Cadillac. I have never driven it. And he gave me a truck, and he said, "It's time to start a business." And I'm like, what? So I went to the local Max Milk, the convenience store, and I had drawn this photo of, Jamie Shanks' landscaping company. And I scanned 500 copies in pink and yellow and orange. And I went around the town, putting them in people's doorways, putting them in the supermarket, the windshield wipers of people's cars.
Like door-to-door canvassing.
Door-to-door canvassing. And I tell this story in Spear Selling that my mom taught me a lesson on day one. She stopped me and said, "Jamie, if you do a great job in the neighborhood, 2 people are going to tell me, Mom, about it. If you do a piss poor job, 8 people in the neighborhood are going to say something about it." And it was that look like, don't embarrass me, do your work. And so I landed like 30, 40 accounts that summer and started growing this business, grade 11 and then through grade 12. One of the funniest stories, so I lived in a province that had 13 grades at the time. And in grade 13, my father comes home from work, and I'm sitting in the backyard pool, 2:00 in the afternoon. And he sits there and he's like, "What are you doing? You have dozens of accounts you need to cut." So I don't have to do anything. I've got Casey, my brother, cutting, Mark and Rob, and I was employing all my high school friends, and they split the commissions with me. I took half the lawn value, and I gave them my truck, gas, and equipment, and they cut all the grass.
Wow, I love that.
My dad was so mad but so proud that I understood profit. Right. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So okay, you kind of learn at an early age about selling and running a business. And then you graduate, and then you start in investment sales, right?
Yeah. So in university, I decided I needed a co-op. I volunteered at Bank of Montreal, Nesbitt Burns, as a kind of a stockbroker. From there, worked on the stock exchange until the market crash of 2000.
Dude, how was that experience? Like, whenever I hear about people working in the stock market, like I think of Wolf of Wall Street, or what's that other
Glengarry Glen? No, it's like a Glengarry Glen Ross.
Yeah, I forget the other movie about the stock market and sales, but I forget.
Boiler Room.
Boiler Room, and then there's also another one. Either way, so yeah, you get it. We got them all. I think of Boiler Room, Wolf of Wall Street, and then there's another one. Can't remember the name right now. You tell me about that experience, man.
It was a super high, I was the guy that would show up at the 8 o'clock investment call where they broadcast globally around the stock pick of the day or the week. And I'd be the guy, I was wearing suspenders and I was reading the paper. I actually thought that a stockbroker picks stocks. It's not true. You're actually a sales professional who acquires accounts and then convinces people to sell what the bank has underwritten. And so this is where I became very disenfranchised with the industry. Market crashes, and many of the brokers I was working under had taken federal employees. Like, I live in the capital of Canada, so most people that live there are federal employees. They're 60 some years old and retired, and they had been investing their money in high tech. And I saw family after family wiped out, millions of dollars out of personal income. I started to hate the business. And a buddy called me one day, 2001. He said, let's go do our master's degree. I said, sure, I'll do anything. Just get me out of here.
How long were you in the investment banking stuff for?
I lasted there 3 years. So I was doing my undergrad degree and working full-time at the same time.
Oh, no shit. That's awesome, man. That's pretty sweet. Like, what were the KPIs as a salesperson in this, like, on the trade floor in the stock market? Was it like you got to dial 100 times, 500? Like, what was it like?
So I was during the transition between stock pickers. So half the brokers I was working with were just stock pickers. They were churning and burning people's accounts with trades. And then the other 50.
And what does that mean? Like, when you say stock pickers, I don't know what that means.
Yeah. So think of investment advisor. So the title of investment advisor. So you see, on TV, the Fisher investment guy or
Yep.
That person is an investment advisor. Okay. The challenge at that time, the industry's evolved a lot, but at that time, they were just salespeople that acquired your family's wealth, and 50% of them were convincing people to buy stocks, the hot stock of the week.
Got it.
It was so volatile. The other were doing what's called managed money. And managed money was the advent of recurring revenue for the investment advisor. It would be like pooled mutual funds and pooled indexes. Yeah. And the investment advisor would just take a percentage annually.
Yeah, they would manage your wealth.
They would manage your wealth. And so I was seeing this dichotomy of ridiculousness of happening, and I just wanted out. And so I left, and I ended up doing my master's degree in Australia.
Oh yeah, and last question with that. What do you think, like, what was the secret of the guys that were the best at that? What were the most wealthy guys on that floor doing?
Easily, they understood recurring revenue. You couldn't churn and burn accounts fast enough, no matter how large they were. You couldn't generate enough commissions, no matter how many customers you had, it would pale in comparison to recurring revenue. So the smart brokers were developing a strategy in the early days of convincing people to give their $500,000, $5 million, what family value over, and say, I'm not smart enough to know every stock to pick. I'm going to give you to this fund manager to invest your money, and I'm going to be your conduit of relationship. And you're going to pay me a percentage of your wealth each year to ensure growth.
Got it. So the guys that were crushing it figured out, okay, we got to go over to this wealth management side. We're going to manage their account and make the recurring revenue versus 100%. Sell the hot stock of the day.
And they did, once they had great customers, they did nothing during the day except wine and dine them.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So it sucks. You hate it. Wasn't a good cultural fit for you. You said you ended up going, did you say something about Australia?
Yeah. So buddy calls and said, let's go do our master's degree. I said, let's just get out of the country. Now, living in a Commonwealth country.
So sick.
Yeah. Living in Canada, it's easy for us to emigrate to other Commonwealth countries. So we were looking at schools in Ireland and the United Kingdom, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and settled on a city called Adelaide, Australia, the 5th largest city of Australia that most people have never heard of. Yeah, beautiful place. And I lived there for 2 years and did my master's degree.
Dude, that sounds amazing. It's like hot in Australia, right? All the time.
Like beautiful. Where I lived, it was in Fahrenheit. It'd be 90 Fahrenheit every day for 5 months. My house was on the ocean.
Why would you ever leave that?
I almost didn't. I played rugby for the university.
Sick.
It was a dream, and I actually applied for my permanent residency. I flew into Sydney, did my permanent residency, and a buddy 2 years in, Canadian, he had moved to Toronto and rented an apartment where his roommates kind of fell through, and it was a very expensive apartment. He's one of my best buddies. He called me, said, "Can you move home? I need a roommate." Like, well, I've been here for 2 years. Shit, I'll go home. Flew home and never left.
Wow. Do you regret moving home? Like, I know you got your company and you got everything going on now, but I'm just curious.
First couple of years, I almost moved back a couple times.
Yeah. I hear that. Okay, so you moved back. You're out of school now. You got your master's. Did you study business when you did your master's?
Studied commerce, undergrad, MBA, and I was unemployable. So here's what happened. I came back. It's January 2004, and the only companies that would even take my resume were companies looking for inside sales help. Because at the end of the day, what is a stockbroker? It's a salesperson.
Yep.
I was trying every other avenue, and they said, no, you're a sales professional. I said, no, I'm not a sales professional. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, I tried to fight it too when I was out of school. I'm like, no, I don't want to do sales.
Yeah, I had no idea what it was. I couldn't find a job for 10 months. So what my parents called, and my friends called, the Bank of Shanks, my mom would send me a check every month to keep me afloat. Except they lived in a city where the cost of living is at least 50% less than the city of Toronto, Canada. So she couldn't believe how much money she was sending me.
Wow.
And I remember this. I had been interviewing at a commercial real estate company, and I had 6 different interviews. They still wouldn't hire me because they thought I didn't have any sales experience. And it was, my birthday is October 30th. And it was in October, my mom called. She said, "This is the last check. If you don't have a job for November, you're moving back to Ottawa." And I'm a 25-year-old now at the time. I've had all this freedom of 2 different universities, living in Australia. I am not moving into my parents' basement.
Yeah.
And so here's what I did. This actually is a true story, and they tell this story at this commercial real estate company all the time. I decided I needed this job. Put on a suit, and I walked into their office, went up the elevator into their office, and I waited for the receptionist to leave her post. I ran into the building, down the hallway, and I ran into the CEO's office. Like, I opened the door to his boardroom-like office. And as I walked in, he was leaving with his squash bag. He was going to go play squash at lunch. And he said, "Who are you?" "Who am I? I'm the guy you interviewed 6 different times." And his name's Dean Newman. He became a great mentor of mine. He said, "You know what? Follow me to the Cambridge Club, the squash courts." So walking down the street, I spent the next 5 minutes convincing him, "I am your guy. I will." And it was no salary. It was 100% commission job.
Wow.
And they would do a draw against commission. So they would give me some floater money for the next couple months. I said, "I will be your guy." And just because I was willing to do what I did, they hired me, and I started on November 4th, 2004. Yeah.
Dude, that's amazing. Yeah, it's funny, as the CEO now, like, that's the stuff that stands out. Doing whatever it takes outside of just being different and going all out. Like, I feel like that's a micro secret. Just like, what would you call that micro secret?
So for me, I realize now as I'm older that I'm motivated by fear a lot. And it's probably my biggest weakness. My biggest weakness is I don't necessarily always see how great I could become. I don't go as big as I could have. But there are moments where I have done these extraordinary things out of sheer fear. Yeah.
Interesting. So leverage the fear to take action. Maybe that's the secret. With that, going into the bank, like, you had no other option to sneak into the commercial real estate company, go to the CEO's office. Like, if someone did that here with me, like, I'd be like, we should consider this person.
We did hire somebody. So a lady named Miriam in our office pulled that play on me. She worked with us for 2 years. She was incredible. Came in, she just landed from Austria. No one would hire her in Toronto. which is surprising because it's the world's most multicultural city. She just couldn't find a sales opportunity. Walked in, and I remember turning around my stand-up desk. And, who's the lady at our front door? And she begged for a job at the front door. And I said, you know what? If you've got that kind of tenacity, you should be selling for us. And was really successful for 2 years and moved on to another career opportunity.
That's awesome, man. So, okay, walk me through how it went then at the commercial real estate company.
So commercial real estate, this is where I got my master's degree in sales. I went from a piece of Play-Doh to a hardened seller because A, 100% commission. B, they hire in classes because commercial real estate has such turnover. I came in a cohort of like 6 people.
Yep.
100% commission where it was simple. It was telephone, and you had to building walk an area. They would give you what's called a node. And they gave me the crappiest in Toronto. Farthest end of the subway line, where small little doctors' offices are, family businesses, not a lot of transaction for a commercial real estate guy. I had to map the entire node, and I called and called. And the CEO of that commercial real estate company was an ex-president of a division at Xerox and took a lot of Xerox classic training. And they spent a lot of time in sales enablement on us. There's a lot of internal training.
Yeah, Xerox had one of the best sales training programs. Like, I mean, a lot of the people that we interview on this show are people that have come from Xerox.
I learned cold call scripts. I still remember it. General benefit statements and specific benefit statements. It's called the FAB, Feature Advantage Benefit. I mean, this is 2005, but I became a cold calling machine. And where my strength lied is I was the second in the office. There's this other guy who was a machine. He'd always be in before me. I was the last to leave. I would work on Saturdays and Sundays, and I was accountable to an outcome. I wouldn't leave until I booked a net new appointment for myself daily. And I was working within 6 to 12 months. I had more projects going than anybody. I wasn't very good at managing the projects, but man, could I generate opportunity.
So like so the micro secret there was just working your ass off and execute building, prospecting, and pipeline, like the critical lifeblood.
For a micro secret for people listening to this, think of the challenger sale, the 5 archetypes of people. I've actually mapped myself against the challenger model. Turns out I'm not necessarily a natural challenger. My archetype is hard worker. Growing up where I did, and I didn't get into the backstories, but I worked on farms, and like I grew up do not drop the shovel until you are done. And so for me, I was just willing to log more hours, put in more work than other people.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's what it takes, right? Log more hours, put in more work. Like, because even if you do nail the strategy and the challenger part, I always go back to hustle beats talent when talent doesn't hustle type of quote, because like, even if you have the strategy and the challenging down, if you're not filling the pipeline 24/7 and prospecting, it's not going to go anywhere. And it sounds like that's what you did at the commercial real estate.
But if you're just starting in sales, you don't really see the full strategy yet anyways. So just put your head down and work. And you will learn the strategy over time.
And so how long did you do the commercial real estate stuff?
Was there for 2.5 years, and a customer of mine poached me. It was a tech company.
Killer.
And, moving from 100% commission so I remember T4 means like your pay stub. In my first year, I did $140,000. So I went from nothing to $140,000. I ended up buying a Jaguar S-Type 4 liter. It was, I was that guy, right? But
well, I mean, dude, you're finally starting to make a lot of money. You want to go through it. Like, I did the same thing when I launched my first company. I bought a Mercedes convertible hardtop. Like when I was 18, it's like you just do that shit when you're not when you're just starting to make some cash.
Exactly. So I'm 26, 27. I'm making 6 figures. My friends aren't yet. So I'm the guy at the club with the friends, like, just spending money. And a customer offers me a 6-figure job and I have no experience running a sales department, but to run their sales department. And anyway, so I learned to hire and fire and grow. And it was a field sales role. So it was very much use the phone to book face-to-face meetings, traveling all around Canada. From that tech company, I actually went back to entrepreneurship. So now I'm 28, 29.
Oh, what did you learn first off at that tech company? Like, what was the biggest thing, successes, failures, key takeaways from, what was that? Was that Captive or was that a different company?
Captive Channel, yeah. And Captive Channel, from a failure, I learned the importance of how important leadership and culture plays into the success or failure of the business. It was a company that was pivoting every 5 minutes. There wasn't great accountability.
Like bad business strategy is what it sounds like.
Yeah, and it was the first time I had experienced internal corporate politics. Amazingly, there wasn't a lot of it at the bank I was working at. There wasn't a lot of it in the commercial real estate company I was working at. It was the first time I experienced poisoning culture. But from a positive sales perspective, I realized that my skills were transposable from one place to the next. So imagine being able to cold call. Booking meetings in commercial real estate was with CFOs and CEOs. That's who makes real estate decisions in companies. Now I'm selling to big box brands. So I'm selling to agencies, out of home marketers that run, Kleenex companies and vacuum companies, their marketing departments. And then they sold commercials in grocery stores. So I'm dealing with grocers as well. Wow. So I realized that business development is the same.
Across anything. Dude, that's a great secret, because I remember when I wanted to leave IBM and Google and I was talking about launching Seamless, the software company, right? And people are like, oh, well, you won't know how to sell it. I'm like, dude, I know how to sell anything. I was like, if you know how to sell, you can sell anything if you learn the personas and the pain. Like, that's a great micro secret. And it sounds like, so you were able to go from commercial real estate to selling for the tech company, and it was pretty easy, like, to make that transition.
It wasn't easy, but I learned how to, after enough time, I could sit at an ad agency's boardroom and have a conversation about CPM rates, eyeballs per thousand.
Yep.
I could sit in a grocer and talk about revenue sharing that would be between the advertiser and this TV network. And I just learned to be a chameleon. And what has always helped me from a chameleon standpoint, this is an important background one that's hard to look for. Because I grew up a country kid and a city kid at the same time, I'm able to go to middle America and make people feel like this guy's worked on a farm, he fishes on the weekend, he's that kind of guy. But at the same time, I can put on a suit and go to a meeting in Manhattan. And I think that's been an important piece of my chameleon way.
Be a chameleon in sales. So it sounds like, a micro secret there, like adapt to the audience.
And it's because I give myself enough life experience where I can have a conversation about sports or,
That's awesome.
I try to avoid politics and religion, but those,
So what made you decide to leave, selling this ad tech technology to doing your own thing?
So I saw a massive opportunity. If anyone is around my age or older listening to this, there was the first green revolution or evolution that was coming. So you're talking 2006, 7, 8, 9, where people were buying green products and using only green things.
Yep.
And in Canada, there was a company in the US that had just started, but nothing in Canada had ever done this. There had never been a landscaping company. Remember, that was my background as a teenager.
Yep.
That had ever built a zero emissions landscaping company or lawn cutting company. And I live in a city where that was important. 7 million people live in Toronto, a lot of wealth in this city, and a lot of lawns to cut. And the message of, I will cut your grass, my company will cut your grass for the same rate as what you're doing today, except every ounce of it is zero emissions, from the vehicles we drive to the tools we use to the give back and profit of using like bullfrog power to. So we bought smart cars, trailering lithium ion battery powered equipment. We did $300,000 in our first year.
Wow.
Overnight, like hundreds of accounts. People loved it. What I learned, I can sell anything. I literally quit my job. We bought a box of 50,000 flyers, and every day for 8 hours a day,
canvassing.
myself and my two business partners walked up and down streets, putting flyers in the door, knocking on the door, introducing ourselves, and talking about next season. Can you imagine like walking day in 8 hours a day for 4 months in the winter? That was hard work. Where you'd be in a snowstorm and you're talking to old ladies about their lawn, and you're thinking, "What have I just done?" Like I was in boardrooms 2 months ago, and now I'm cutting people's grass.
Wow. I don't even want to like. I love hiring, by the way. I love hiring people that sell door to door or who have sold door to door, as long as they can learn the tech. Because if you could sell door to door, you could sell anything to anyone.
You're in people's living rooms in a very vulnerable situation, getting them to sign a sheet of paper for $1,000. Like the average contract value in landscaping is like $1,000. It's only $1,000, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
You have to do hundreds and hundreds of these to build a business.
That's crazy. So why did you? So you were just like, man, this green thing's going to blow up. I'm going to go.
It was an amazing experience. All kinds of press, deep in the Google web. There's still photos of me online with my eco cut. The idea was I wanted to franchise this, but again, where I failed was execution of a lot of things. The saving of money for the seasonality of it, learning the franchising model, and we had a partnership blow up. So at the end of the season, I had a vision. I'm either going to franchise this. They were looking at more of a localized business. They ended up buying me out because all I wanted to do was franchise, because I saw I could transpose my skills into franchising, not in the act of building Toronto's largest landscaping company.
Wow. So they wanted to just stay local. They didn't want to.
They wanted to stay local, do a variety of different things. I wanted to be the best in the world at one thing. And that was just cutting grass with zero emissions and have a compelling marketing story. That's really what it was.
I love that idea, because then you could just easily scale that. So you blow up, they buy you out. Did you feel like the world was over? This is 2008. I'm born in 78. I'm now 30 years old. So I have friends making six figures, buying homes, cars, starting families. I have no job. I'm not married. I had to sell my cars to fund this business. Like I am at a very low period of time at 30 years old. And that's when the market crashed too, because that was right when I graduated.
The next job I take.
Gosh.
So
you're in this bad state.
I'm in this bad state. Again, I'm floating my resume out again. Try to explain to people all these things. Most companies are not touching the guy that was the entrepreneur because they see me as a flight risk. But the reality is there was one company, startup software company, building called data rooms. So if anyone's ever done mergers and acquisitions, worked at a law firm, iBank, all of your data has to sit in a data room. They were a disruptor.
Data rooms.
They became a very successful data room disruptor.
It's hard to like data rooms, just for the audience. Like if you're a startup and VCs or private equity wants to invest in your startup, you have to share with them balance sheets, income statements, P&Ls, business plans, biographies, right? Everything. Like literally your whole business has to live in these guys.
And it has to be highly secure, and it has to be where you can collaborate on documents where lawyers, investment bankers, VC firms, and C-level executives can communicate in one spot. So long of the short is the CEO, Joel Lessam, saw in me somebody who was adaptable and willing to learn. He needed to start a sales force. And so at the same time, you had a gentleman named Paul St. Onge and myself start this sales organization. And this was the funny one where selling is transposable. At that time, they were just blasting out emails and maybe following up an inbound. Day one, I literally start hitting the phone and start calling investment bankers.
I love that.
And I remember Joel turning to me, he said, "That'll never work. We don't sell that way." 3 days later, after I'd booked a ton of meetings, he's like, I think we could move to an outbound sales model. And we were the very first, like in Toronto, this concept, there was a gentleman named Nigel something, I can't remember, in 2008, 2009, started coining this term Sales 2.0. And what we were doing is we used a tool called Leadlander that could track any person or company looking at your website. We were one of the first using marketing automation. I think we were using Marketo at the time.
Wow.
So we're using all these tools, and we could track content consumption, who's on the website, who's consuming data and input for our insights and content. And I would call investment bankers and say, listen, you're on our website right now. You're probably in a deal. What is your game plan? And they were blown away. How did you know we're about to do these deals? And we had a very simple value proposition. That world was filled with a pay-per-deal room, and we were a $500 a month unlimited. So law firms could use this as a revenue source. They had one data room that they could resell hundreds of times to customers. Anyways, long and the short, built this thing up to $3 million ARR. Awesome. To the point where it was now revenue neutral. It was spending as much as it was burning. And Paul and I saw an opportunity in which, so this is 2 years later, built this thing up. We had a small sales force. Paul and I saw an opportunity to teach Sales 2.0 to other local Toronto companies. So I'll kind of pause there, but I now am going to go back to being an entrepreneur.
So the biggest secrets, it sounds like outbound, like again, the sales skills are transferable, and then outbound, what was the biggest, in your mind, biggest takeaways or secrets from that experience selling the deal room software?
The biggest secret that I've learned was that tools can be an accelerant to a process that works. If I didn't have a great script or a great sales presentation or a value proposition, so I didn't have a sales process, I could have all the tools in the world, they would have meant nothing. But it was the fact that I was able to use these tools as an accelerant to select the accounts that had greatest buying propensity to buy. I would focus on those, made us successful. So it got me back to six-figure income, got the company building up the steam that needed.
Dude, that's awesome. And that's after you were at that low point with the zero emissions company. I love that.
Yeah.
And you also got to tap into your investment banking stuff, like your experience there selling to that audience. Like you already knew half of the audience. You may not have known the VCs, but you probably knew how to be a chameleon and speak to their language.
Well, so Paul stuck to selling, if I recall, Paul was selling private equity firms and venture cap companies. We had one guy selling law firms, and I stuck to iBankers. iBankers was such an easy conversation for me because it was service-based business, and they're in the business of selling themselves or selling businesses just like a stockbroker. It was like having a stockbroker conversation.
Yeah, it's so awesome. That's, I did the same thing, like selling for IBM and Google when we launched Seamless. It's all I sold to was ad tech companies, and then expanded from there because you just know that, the space.
You can have the conversation in your sleep.
And also the micro secrets too. It sounds like, okay, so the tech helps, but you need, it sounds like scripts, value propositions, and buying propensity, like those three things for outbound, it led to a lot of the success there.
Well, and it's going to play heavily into Sales for Life because I'm starting to realize, imagine there are thousands of iBanking firms globally. There's only one guy calling into that iBank. And we are doing on average, if I recall, 10 to 20 transactions a month. So I have to figure out, where do I spend my time? And this becomes huge as I eventually get to Sales for Life. But what happened was Paul and I leave the business and we start a consulting firm. Okay. And it was Johnny's hodgepodge of services, right? So it was
anything that you'll buy.
Yeah, you give me $5,000 a month and I'll do anything. And so you imagine every sales service from content development to outbound prospecting on behalf of people to outbound LinkedIn messaging on behalf of people to hiring and firing sales forces to, anyways, a very unsustainable jack of all trades business. So we run this business for about a year, and Paul didn't really love that. But it requires so much mental energy to go from one customer to the next. We're running 6 projects at the same time and nothing.
17 different products. And
nothing
so
scalable.
hard. Yeah.
Making no money. Paul decides, you know what, I'm going to go do something else. And so another customer of mine, a guy named Graham Walker, he wanted to come into the business. Again, we kept doing what we were doing. So this comes to where the Sales for Life starts to come about. So now I've had this thing for 18 months. I barely have any money, kind of like half bankrupt at this point.
Yep.
And then, now I've met a girl, becomes a girlfriend, becomes a fiance, and it's days before my wedding. And I'm walking into a customer's office. It was actually an SAP value-added reseller. I walked into their office and a federal police officer was standing behind the door. Canada, it's called the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And that company got caught with fraud and embezzlement. They owed me $35,000 US, which is all the money in the world to me. Right. I'm never going to get paid because I'm an unsecured vendor. And now, all of a sudden, I'm about to go get married in Costa Rica. I have no prospects, no job. I banked a lot on this customer. And so I negated doing business development for myself. And the whole thing implodes.
Holy cow, dude. Did your heart just sink when you got there and you see the federal agents, or what do you call them out there again? Royal
Canadian Mounted Police. Red uniform. You see one, you never want to see it again.
Oh my gosh.
You know you're in trouble when you see a Mountie.
Wow. So, and before the wedding and like just being an entrepreneur, like it's tough because you've got so much money wrapped up in the business. Like I've been dating my fiance for 11 years now. And she's been with me. This is our 3rd company together over 11 years. And it's funny, like she knows like we're probably going to be all in a lot in our life. Like, and it will either go really well or go completely bankrupt a lot. Like, were you just like, shit, I've got this wedding. I don't know how to pay for this wedding. What the hell am I going to do? Like, that's a lot of stress 2 or 3 days before Costa Rica.
You know, you just said something that reminded me. Us as entrepreneurs, we are gamblers.
Addicted gamblers, dude.
When I was 18, in my first year of university, I never told this. I don't know if many people know this story. I became addicted. So there was a casino on the French border in Quebec, across the bridge from Ottawa. I'd go to the casino every night, and I blew a year's tuition on roulette. And my dad had to bail out the second year's tuition because it becomes, I think as entrepreneurs, it is a little bit of a sickness of going all in. And I've gone in a lot.
Dude, my first business was for the online gambling industry because I was addicted to poker, and then I figured out how to recruit people to join the online poker sites. So dude, I love that. The addicted to gambling. It's so true. Like entrepreneurs, salespeople.
I never ever gamble. Like I probably do 3 to 4 sales kickoffs a year in Vegas. You'll never see me put down a chip because I know I sit down at that table and you give me a bank card,
you'll fly.
I'm going all in.
Yeah. I mean, it's salespeople, entrepreneurs, dude. We're just going all in on a lot of these ventures, and that's crazy. Okay, so Costa Rica.
Yeah, so I'm in Costa Rica. I'm putting on a brave face. My best friends are there.
You have to, right?
Yeah, we're surfing. It's gorgeous, and I kind of forget my world. But we fly from Costa Rica.
Probably drink a lot to. Try not to think about like the shit storm that you're in.
All the imperials you can drink, right? Fly from there to Paris, France. That's our honeymoon.
Oh, that's sick.
We're on the Champs-Élysées. My wife buys a purse. We're drinking champagne. Again, it's like my world at home isn't a reality. Mm-hmm. And I tell this story on stage. It was the worst day of my life. I come home. It's pouring rain, and we have this little crummy apartment at the time in Toronto, Canada. That morning, I'd eaten a croissant to the Eiffel Tower, and now reality sets in. And I just start to cry right at the doorway because I have nothing, and we're starting all over. Thankfully, my wife was working at Coca-Cola, had a really stable job, awesome. Where she could help us for the next couple of years. But this is the moment where my life kind of really changed. And there's 2 paths in life. You either fight or you flight. And I could have gone back to being an employee yet again. And there's nothing wrong with being an employee. That's just not my DNA. And for the next 6 months, I would sit in our spare bedroom, which was global head office at the time, and it'd be 3 a.m.
Global head office.
Yeah, I can't sleep, I can't eat, and I would stare at my computer just like this. And I remember this, where I would sit and think, okay, I could bang out the phone and write emails, but I need to find a new way to prospect for me. Forget my customers, me. And night after night, for whatever reason, I started discovering these back doors and these hacks that I could use on tools like LinkedIn and Twitter. At the time, the word social selling didn't exist. There were no online courses to teach you. I just saw it as a research and communication and engagement tool that it's like nobody had ever discovered. And I started booking meetings in the middle of the night. And then I started showing people what I had learned. And people would stop meetings and say, you know, all those other services you were telling me about? Yeah, those are kind of garbage. But the thing you just showed me on LinkedIn, I'll pay you to do that.
Yeah.
And I realized, holy crap, a business is born.
Damn. And that's when like you went all in on social selling and sales for life?
Well, I didn't go all in. I started dipping my toes, experimenting. And my all-in moment, I decided I would take the few dollars I had and I would fly to Dallas, Texas, and attend the 2012 American Association of Inside Sales Professionals, AAISP, Leadership Summit.
Yeah.
And we're
a big sponsorship.
Listen, I've been part of that for years now. And I was meeting people whose books I had on my shelf. So I was meeting Jill Konrath and Trish Bertuzzi and Ken Krogh. And I was starstruck. And here's the moment that changed my life. I'm in a breakout session as an attendee to a lady named Josiane Fagan, who's doing a workshop on, can social media work for sales or something like this? And I had been pre-planning that I was going to be the guy that raised his hand and asked some questions. So I kind of disrupted her session and started talking about what I was seeing from meetings booked on LinkedIn. The whole room, well, you know who was sitting beside me? Ken Krogh was sitting here.
That's awesome.
A guy named Rolf von Sosen, then was the chief marketing officer at LinkedIn, was beside me here. I had all these, the guy from the
CEO. How the hell did you get those seats, dude?
They didn't know who the hell I was. So what happened is everybody stopped looking at Josiane and started talking to me in this workshop. As we're walking out, Ken Krogh turns to me and said, I want to do a webinar with you. I want to do an ebook. This is amazing. And it was the highest performing ebook in inside sales history. And it was still the best performing until like a year ago. And this is 2012. So anyways, long and the short is I called my new business partner, George Albert with Sales for Life. And because there's a whole story of how we became partners. But anyways, I called him and I said, you know that thing that people are talking, or I've been talking about this thing called social selling? We are going to stop all of our services and we're going to do one thing. And we're going to be the best at it. We're going to train people on social selling. He kind of, in the book, he swore, he's like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. But we went 100%, all chips. We had a recruiting service that did a couple $100,000 a year. We did all this stuff, all in, canceled every service. One thing.
Damn, just because you saw it blow up like in 2012 with all these thought leaders like being interested in it, wanted to dive into it. I mean, that's risky. That's gambling. You gambled again. Like, okay, I think this is going to be big. You went all in on it. Like that could have gone one of two ways. Like you were either right or wrong.
It was a full bet, and we'll get into the future. Like I am starting to see artificial intelligence and machine learning be in the 2020s what I saw social and digital be in 2012.
Good. I'm in the right space.
We'll get into that in the future. But ultimately, here's what I have learned. Being a jack of all trades gets you nothing.
Gosh.
I
love that secret. That's a great micro secret. Like, don't try to be everything to anyone. If you are not number one or two at one thing, don't do it at all. You have to literally be the best. And you may not be able, like,
building a service-based business around social and digital selling, we're not going to be $1 billion company. But what we can be is really successful. And the definition of successful is different for every person, but you can be very successful if you just pick that niche. And we went all in and built a training program around the problem, which was pipeline creation, business development.
Yeah. And I remember because I had this idea of like, you know, I was starting to work on prototypes like 2 years after you started Sales for Life. I started working on like, I have this crazy idea called Seamless Contacts, and we connected because I was like, dude, you went from nowhere and you're starting to blow up on social. And I was like, I got this like social selling tool. And I'm like, I'm scared to quit my job. And you're like, dude, I'm 2 years in. It was hell, but I survived. You should do it. And, you know, you inspired me with the content and being out there and launching my company, which was, you know, I'm just grateful for you giving me your advice like 2 years after you launched your company. It's just crazy to see like where everyone's was like working with you and working with other people from the beginning to see where they're at today. To walk me through. So, okay, you go all in on social. What the hell happens next, man?
So it blows up really quick. And I'm going to bring back a story that I learned from Firmex. Remember around propensity to buy and list selection?
Yep.
I had a theory, and this one theory is the catalyst to all of Sales for Life. Think of it as like my flux capacitor, Doc Brown moment. What I realized in pipeline creation and business development is that sellers focus on the wrong accounts. Whether you're an account-based seller in a geographic territory or in a vertical, they start shotgunning their message to all accounts in Texas or the airline industry. What they didn't do is actually draw a circle around. They took a customer and they put it in the center of a sheet of paper, a successful customer of theirs, drew a circle around it and said, who cares? And they mapped the people and the companies that are most interrelated, we call social proximity, around that story. So here's basically what happened is as I had this training curriculum, we won our first customer who gave me $2,500 to do a workshop to their global sales force. And this is a company called Vision Critical, right? So they took a bet on me to give me $2,500. What I did is I drew on a sheet of paper their logo. And I said, who cares? Who cares about them or the story of the chief revenue officer, Mark Bergen, who took a chance on us? And we helped them book 31 net new meetings in 60 days just using LinkedIn. And that was awesome at the time.
And so you said like the social propensity, because I love this and I believe wholeheartedly in it. I recently believe wholeheartedly in it. Because you were like, who gives a shit about this story? Like, who would this resonate so well with that they would want to hit the reply button on LinkedIn instantly to learn more? Is that what you guys did?
Exactly. So let's make this real as an example. So tell me about a great customer. Give me a logo, great customer.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've got a huge customer. I mean, we had Amazon generate millions in sales using Seamless. I had salespeople at Facebook that use Seamless that increased appointments from like 4 a day to 16. Like, you know, on average, it just blew up.
So let's use Amazon. Take Amazon, put them on a sheet of paper. Now draw a radiating spoke of spider webs coming off of it. Who cares? Well, as an example, everyone that used to work at AWS, Amazon Web Services, that has now left and became a marketing or sales leader at another company, okay? Because you could tell the Amazon story to leaders at those companies and say, well, I need some of that. Next, what about the vendors or partners that supply business to Amazon? Well, the businesses are intertwined. So you think of data centers that host for Amazon and all these kind of things. You've got competitors, Microsoft and Google as an example, like Microsoft Azure.
Yep.
And then finally, think of the key stakeholders you deal with every day over at Amazon, decision makers, champions, influencers. That's who they're connected to. Other CMOs and chief revenue officers. Well, how do you tap their relationships to broker you an introduction? That simple concept takes one customer and builds you out a list of 10. So I took that one story and started doing this. Within 1 year, we won the global Oracle account. I mean, a lot of thanks to Joe Rowley on that, and the global Thomson Reuters account. So I went from a $2,500, and this is the preface to Spear Selling. In 1 year, went from a $2,500 local account in Toronto to the single largest social selling training deployment, where we had to actually build curriculum as we were going, like get in front of the video camera, build out worksheets and guides and quizzes.
Yep.
Built it for Thomson Reuters. So now we legitimized ourselves, and we did $400,000 in revenue in our first year. So we
all from using the social sphere. What is that called again?
Sphere of influence.
Sphere of
influence. And it's evolved a lot since, but imagine you're working in a territory. I'm using, think of it as an asymmetrical competitive advantage, relationships. What accounts are green flags and which accounts are red flags? Because there's an asymmetrical competitive disadvantage. You think of your own competitors. If you took and mapped every past employee that came from those companies and went to other businesses, the people that have skills, certifications, or projects launched with your competitors, and map them all based on free and available information on LinkedIn, these are accounts that you have risk in. Doesn't mean you don't sell to them. It means that you minimize your efforts against those accounts because you have an asymmetrical disadvantage, competitive disadvantage.
Wow.
So that simple concept changed account selection for not only myself, but taught it to customers.
So let's think about that, because this is a game-changing sales secret, right? So what do you look at to define that sphere of influence? So Amazon, we find other companies like Amazon, people that worked at Amazon that are new, current at different companies who would resonate with the Amazon story. What else did you say you would look at?
So I would think of the champions, influencers, and decision makers that are, you think of your customer success team right now that works the Amazon account. Who do they talk to every day? Well, there's Susan and Cheryl and Billy, different departments. Inside their own social network, these people have their own sphere of influence. Those are college roommates. Those are past employees. Those are people that they meet at trade shows. But most of their network are made up of like-minded people. So a chief marketing officer is connected with a ton of other marketers. And it's being able to tap into the people you already are your advocates and say, hey, I notice you're connected to the chief marketing officer over at Barracuda Networks. I know you know them well because you also know 17 other people at Barracuda. Do you mind brokering me this introduction? And I'll give you the sales play. Here's the message. Here's what you give them.
That's another micro secret. As for the introductions, provide the scripts in advance to make it easy. What'd you call it? Broker the intro?
Yeah, I'll help you with the referral message. It's called the power of threes. So imagine you're my advocate, and I go into and I'll drop into your own social network, and I can see everyone you're connected to. I would identify only 3 people at one account or 3 people at 3 different accounts. Anything more than 3, and it's greedy, but I need to give you a prescriptive play. I can't say, can you introduce me to every marketer you know? Where do I start?
Right.
So I say, I want to introduce to Cheryl, Susan, and John for these reasons. How well do you know them? And you'd say, well, there's buttons in LinkedIn. I won't get into it on this, but it helps me understand relationship strength. You can actually use LinkedIn Navigator to manipulate relationship strength. The long and the short is,
what's the secret to do that?
So you go into somebody's social network and click on company, and it takes their entire social network and it rolls it up and stack ranks it by the companies. So what you do is you focus on the top 3 or 4. Because why do they have a large network there? Their brother works there. They have their companies are next door neighbors, and they have social Thursday drinks together.
So if I pulled you up, Jamie, on Sales Nav, and then I clicked on the companies tab, it would show me top down. Like Oracle could be up there.
Our customers. You're going to know who my customers are because you're going to see I'm connected like 50 people at one company.
Damn.
They'd be a customer.
I love that.
So it allows me to focus my time and energy. And I'm asking for these 3 introductions, but I give you the play to broker the introduction and to give you, this is why I like to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator, because when they look at that message, There's a call to action that opens up a view into my world so they know, why am I taking this meeting? So these are just the concepts.
It's a huge secret. And by doing these things with basically, you invest a lot of time into the account selection so that you're investing all of your effort. Like, I feel like that's an 80-20 hack. Like 80% of your results are based on 20% of the effort. And that 20% is the account selection for you guys.
I fully agree. So yesterday we did a webinar with another sales training company, and they focus from meeting already booked to close. Okay, that was their expertise. Our expertise is nothing to meeting booked, right?
Yep,
and in that reality, if you looked at our courseware, at least more than 50% is around account selection, total addressable market mapping, account selection, and account planning before engagement. Engagement, storyboarding your sales plays all happen before you actually engage. So you're right, it is a Pareto's law, 80-20, 80% of planning before 20% of execution.
Yeah, this is the stuff that I'm even working on to 10x the growth of my business, because I know we're not doing those things. Like, if you go to a train station and you yell, hey, everybody, look at me, talk to me. Like, no one's going to turn their head. But if you walk into the train station in Toronto and you're like, hey, Jaime, dude, you're going to look at me and be like, how the hell do you know me? And like, I feel like that's the critical secret, to this account sphere of influence, is like talking to the right buyer at the right time with the right message, with the right value props and scripts.
And those are, there's other account selection secrets inside of tools like LinkedIn. I can pull, what university did you go to?
I went to Ohio University for my undergrad and my MBA. Go Bobcats.
Okay. So who are the Bobcats? Remember, I'm Canadian.
Who are the Bobcats? I don't even know. It's like, what do you mean? Who are they? Like,
like what university is the Bobcats?
Oh, well, it's Ohio University.
Oh, Ohio University. Okay.
Yeah, the Ohio University.
Okay. So
I don't even know what the freaking mascot is. It's like, it's a bobcat. It's a bobcat.
Yeah. So here's another example. Go into the free LinkedIn tool right now and click on the alumni button of your university in Ohio. And then it allows me to sort by any city, any job function, any company in the world. I could right now pull up the list of any person working at Google, as an example, that went to the university in Ohio that you went to. And I can even do a date range of graduation. This is part of your own personal sphere of influence, because there's stories of living in that place in Ohio that only those that know. This was one that was given to me by Jill Rowley. She started doing this at Eloqua.
By the way, we got to get her in the book. I keep hitting her up on LinkedIn, and I'm not getting anywhere. We'll get her in the book, though.
We'll get her. Yeah.
I'm going to use this sphere of influence to get you.
So she's a partner in my firm.
I know. That's awesome.
Here's what she used to do. Here's her play. She went to the university. So she was the #1 seller at Eloqua, 52 quarters in a row for 10 years. So people would ask her,
dude,
in year 8, they'd go, how is it on the 40th quarter, you're still the #1? You know what her answer always used to be? Wahoo wah. And wahoo wah is the football battle cry of the University of Virginia. So what she used to do, she would go into LinkedIn and she could map every CEO, CMO, and CSO, Chief Sales Officer, Chief Revenue Officer, and map who went to the University of Virginia. And then she would write them emails or call them or send them a LinkedIn message. And the whole subject line would just say, wahoo wah. And she would get meetings with CEOs of Fortune 2000 companies who hadn't lived in Virginia in 20 years, and they'd reminisce about their days in Virginia. And she would, and so for me, I use this all the time. My undergrad at the University of Ottawa, I don't live there anymore, but there's 2 famous stories there. There's a campus pub that everyone for generations had been to. Number 2, there's the largest outdoor skating rink in the world called the Rideau Canal. You can skate the whole city. And so I can start conversations with chief revenue officers who went to Ottawa U 20, 30 years ago. And all we have to do is we start the conversation on our sphere of influence, and then we bring it to business. Disarms them, makes it simpler to engage.
Dude, that campaign's ingenious. So she was number one for 52 quarters at Eloqua.
52 quarters in a row before Eloqua was bought by Oracle.
Using this alumni campaign.
I mean, it was amongst her other sales plays, but the amount of revenue she did tied to the University of Virginia.
Wahoo-wah.
Wahoo-wah.
Damn. So, okay. Getting back to you, though, the 80-20 rule blew up your business is what it sounds like. You focusing on the account sphere of influence. And like ever since I've known you at Sales for Life, like you win these like big like dream accounts that I would love to win. And there's like 50 million decision makers, buyers, CFOs, like the buying committees of these companies are impossible to break. Like, you know, I've got hundreds of people at Oracle on Seamless, and I'm trying to break into the account, and like they're like, it's going to be a year security review, and like you're like, yeah, we're just the Oracle sales training company of record, blah blah blah. Like, I'm like, damn, dude, how did you how do you how are you bringing in these big accounts?
If you really looked at, and this was our edge to the wedge, our little niche. So not only the challenge for us overcoming over the years was people saw social selling and digital selling as a side hustle of activity that needed to happen. It's like, I do sales things and I do social selling things. We've been really helping the world understand, no. All they are is a complement to your existing go-to-market strategy and your sales motion, or they're an accelerant. You just do them together. But what classic sales training would really focus people on how to run meetings, how to negotiate, how to work with procurement. No one taught people and as the world has moved to more of an account-based centric, where the percentage of sales quota attainment that the average seller is personally responsible for in self-generating, that doesn't come from marketing and doesn't come from the channel, is typically anywhere between 50 to 80%. So if 50 to 80% of my sales quota attainment isn't going to be handed to me, and I need to learn to fish, that fishing skill is a real deficiency in most account executives and BDRs, LDRs, SDRs. So our little niche of the world is forget about being a great presenter on PowerPoint. Right. If you can't book yourself a meeting, it won't matter.
You won't have anything to present on.
Exactly. So we refined an ability to teach ourselves to do business development and then teach others. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. As you win an Oracle, and then we did the global rollout for Microsoft. The Microsoft sellers all use our social selling curriculum. Amazing, man. The reality is, remember, job changes is a huge trigger. It's one of the pillars of a modern digital seller.
We interviewed Craig Elias from your back of the woods. You know, he says that the trigger events of people that change their jobs, VP of sales, are like a gazillion % more likely to change vendors, which I thought was interesting. Like, do you agree with that?
Bring in the people, tech, and process that made them successful in the past. Average VP of sales lasts 17 months. Average North American employee keeps their job 2.5 years. I'm born in 78. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm expected to have 11 job changes in my lifetime. I'm probably already on, if you counted them up, I'm 14. Here's the reality, though. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you work with a customer, you build rapport, and you build value. Inevitably, people are going to leave. You know, a lot of our customers sell into the human resources function. There is more job changes in HR than there is in almost every other profession. And so what happens is they start working with a chief human resources officer, then they leave, and then they just call them up at the next business and say, congratulations. And they start educating them again. And it just becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Wow. So that's incredible. And the way that, you know, so job changes is a big secret. Like how you know, using your sphere of influence to connect to these accounts. Like, I still want to know the secrets of you landing all these whales. Like, give me some of the big, like the top ones of like how you got in and won Oracle, how you got in and won Microsoft. And you may have already covered it, but like
No.
This people are dying to know how to break into these enterprise accounts, and
What I've done is given myself an asymmetrical competitive advantage. All I've done is given myself an advantage because I've realized that relationships there's a saying in entrepreneurship that the only sustainable competitive advantage in a business is culture. People can rip off your marketing and your sales and everything else. Well, in sales, your only sustainable competitive advantage is relationships. So that's one strength, but that doesn't mean I'm going to win the business. The second piece to that, after I've planned triggers, referrals, insights, and competitive intelligence, I build an engagement strategy called storyboarding. And this is kind of that other secret. If you've ever written a book, made a movie script or anything like that, how do you
mind map, right?
You actually draw out the scenes or the acts in advance. Here's where sellers make a mistake. They get on the phone or they use tools. They'll use SalesLoft or Outreach.io, and their cadence and sequence is eerily similar on every touch point. It's like,
and your audio just went out a little bit. I don't know if you're on a mic or something. I mean, I could still hear you. It just got.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, sorry. I must have tapped it or something.
Okay.
So here's the mistake that sellers make. They hit the phones, they send emails, they use tools like SalesLoft and Outreach.io. The challenge is that their cadence and sequencing messages are eerily similar on every touch point. They're not, they haven't stepped back and built sales plays as if they were writing scenes in a movie. So what we help companies understand is you'll step back and you'll draw out these plays. First play, I'm going to engage the customer on our common sphere of influence. If that play doesn't work, the next one is I'm going to do a market intelligence study of compare them against best in class and against their competition. If that doesn't work, play number 3, I'm going to show them market trends for the year 2020 in their industry. If that play doesn't work, I call this the Emerald City. I'm actually going to give them a day in a life. I'm going to make a video of what success would look like 1 year from today if they were a customer. And if that play doesn't work, every one of these is completely different. So it's a teacher-student process. What's made us successful is we are constantly teaching. We'll get on calls. We won't even talk about us. I'll show them best practices for half an hour or an hour. We call it the hour of power. I'll be on a call and just show them best practices. And then I'll let them digest and then come back and say, if you want to be best in class, and if your sellers can't do what I just did in 30 minutes, you've got a problem. And it's constantly educating and showing people opportunity cost of what they don't already know.
I love that. These different plays. Wow.
Most sellers are running like
one pitch.
It's like if they were playing Nintendo, they're hitting the repeat button on the NFL.
Did you see my email following up here, circling back here? There's no value add with that shit.
You're not teaching. There's the most important study that kicked off digital selling. Forrester and Corporate Visions did a study, and it showed that 74% of deals are awarded to a seller, not a company, but a seller that's first to provide value and insight in the deal. Meaning, it's exactly like the movie Inception. Plant a seed in somebody's mind, let it germinate. And over time, the germinated idea starts to take over, and they realize, I've got a problem. I need to solve it. And they divert back to the people that taught them about the original problem. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to plant seeds in people's minds before other people.
Oh, man. This is incredible. And you know, I know this, a lot of this was, a big prime point for spear selling, which, tell me a little bit about spear selling. And by the way, we're honored. Thank you so much for including Seamless.AI, the world's best sales leads in the book. We're humbled and honored to be a part of it. But I know you've got, number one, part one, you've got the select your accounts with the social proximity, right? Mindset. And then plan your sales plays, which you just went over with the storyboards. That's a whole secret like that you went over. I think you've got the engaging, right? Engage the accounts with the
engage being bold and different, using tools like video. Video is an example. Why am I doing this? One, I'm humanizing myself. People buy from people. Number two, I talk 500 words a minute. So I can synthesize in 60 seconds, 5 ideas that you could never contextualize in an email. And also tools like video allow me to map buying propensity. I can see who's actually looking at them. I can map the buying committee because I can see if they're forwarding the videos around the business. That's just part of being a modern digital seller.
I love that.
And then the SPEAR is an acronym: select, plan, engage, activate the account. So now I'm building nurturing paths, also known as learning paths. And then ultimately I'm being very accountable and acute to either replacing that account. Like, don't hold on to an account for 9 months if your sales cycle is
30 days. Yeah. Seamless is 30 days and you're still on an account.
Ours is 90 days is the red flag. Because I even talk about it in the book. Like, we've mapped our sales qualified lead to close one down to the day. And when it hits after 1 quarter, guess what? The chief revenue officer has moved on to another initiative. They'll come back one day, but it's being objective about replacing that account and getting another one in the sequence.
Yeah, that's amazing. By the way, what is your favorite tools for video selling?
So for myself, being Canadian, we love using Vidyard's Go Video. They're out of a suburb of Toronto, Canada. Yep. And it's the best tool because it also integrates into all marketing automation platforms and gives you big data on viewership.
Yep. And what do you love for sales data?
We talked about this before the call, and this is an important one because the modern digital seller doesn't abandon tools like the telephone. The telephone is still incredibly powerful. And we talked about how our business needs your data to build out mobile phones. Guess what? Like, not everybody responds to the zillion emails they have or the cajillion LinkedIn messages they get. I need to be omni-channel, and mobile phones is still wickedly and powerful. I need your data to be able to map my total addressable market and whittle down who am I going to focus on.
Yeah, it's so cool, like, to see that we've both started companies on the one thing of like going from nothing to meeting booked. And like, I obsess over this. I've obsessed over solving that problem for 4 years, building Seamless. And you've done the same thing with sales training and execution. Like, it's
if you can get in the door, that's it. Like, most sellers can't get in the door. All I'm offering you is a faster, more efficient way in that door. After that, it's all you. Just
because like once you have the data, like pairing like a Seamless with Spear selling and the Sales for Life stuff, now you've got the data, you've got the content, the scripts, the strategy, and the right targeting, dude. Like, you're gonna probably 5-10x the amount of appointments that you lock on the calendar. It's incredible. So Spear Selling, you guys got to pick up the book, the Ultimate Account Based Sales Book. Spear Selling, it's on Amazon, and then also they could buy it directly. Yeah, Audible on your site too, right?
Oh no, everything's in. We made it simple. Amazon. Don't buy it.
I love that. I love that. That's that way you don't need to worry about the distribution. Okay, so now we're at the most important question of the show. Sales secrets from the top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Jaime Shanks, if you had to go back in time to when you first started in selling and you could only tell yourself one sales secret to maximize your sales success, what would that be?
Now, I'm going to pause for a second because I kind of have two.
I love it. Let's hear both of them.
One is going to be something that we covered. I would go back in time and I would teach myself how to select accounts to give myself a competitive advantage over other people. And I would understand that your network is your net worth. Relationships are the single pillar that I can leverage and my company can leverage to select accounts to give myself a better edge over the competition. But the other sales secret that I would give myself, I was not a self-educator post-secondary education. So from the ages of 24 to 30, I actually, I was a passenger to the sales world. I really didn't treat it as a craft. I didn't treat it as a vocation. I treated sales as a job. I would go in, do my thing. Yes, I worked hard, but I didn't learn I didn't learn plays. I didn't study. I've become a massive Audibles listener. I have a goal every year where I listen to 50 books, one a week. And in between that, I'm listening to podcasts. And what I'm educating myself on has changed. I used to really, really focus on learning the craft of sales.
Yeah,
now I'm actually learning the craft of being a CEO of a professional services firm. So while my books have changed, my consistent consumption of new skills is not. And if I was a 25-year-old again, you got to understand you are only beginning your learning journey, not ending it with school.
I love that. And that was the premise. Yeah, I got lucky because I did the opposite of what you did. So I just studied all the top sales experts like you and the hundreds of other people that we're interviewing. That's why we were writing this book, because it's like, dude, that takes a decade to do. Let's just have one book that shares all the top secrets from the top sales experts. I love that, though. I was able to become a multi-million-dollar sales earner at a very young age because of that one secret that you just shared. Like, you got to study this, read, skill up, train, leverage the Sales for Life training or other training out there. You have to be training and learning all the time. Like, it's the number one most return on investment. If you don't invest in the time to train and skill up, like, you will die or get passed by other people who do, like me.
And this is, without sounding self-serving, this is the power of things like sales training. Let's say the average investment of a seller is around $1,500 to $3,000 per seller in an organization for enablement, sales performance, and skills. But the yield and throughput, I mean, if your ACV, average contract value, is 50 grand, 100 grand, 500 grand, if you're creating if it's teaching you to create one more opportunity every quarter for 4 quarters, and you have a 25% close rate, which is typically about standard operating procedure in a software company, you're talking about one extra deal, but your ACV is 50 or 100 grand. Your LTV is multiple 100,000. You just invested, a couple $1,000s to go make hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. It is such an important, and no one taught me that when I was younger, that acquiring information is a huge competitive advantage.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's a big one. That's a huge one. But I think for this chapter, I want to focus on the account. So yes. How would you sum up the secret in one tweet about the importance of account selection?
Account selection is around using the relationship strength of you and your company that you could leverage as an asymmetrical competitive advantage known as the sphere of influence.
Yeah. And I mean, we could even tie the chapter title into around spear selling too. Like, you got to leverage the spear or something like that. I mean,
yeah, spear is an entire process. Yep. Where account selection is the tip of the spear.
Got it. And that was why you made it part 1. Was that why you made it part 1? Because it was the most important?
No, it's also the beginning. Like, and here's where I have watched thousands of sellers have the best planning and engagement strategies. Like, they did all the rest that were amazing, but they were just calling upon accounts that, using free and available information. I was like, I remember this wholeheartedly at companies like Microsoft. You would go in and look at the company they were calling at. I said, do you realize, like, the chief operating officer used to work at AWS? How do you honestly think you're going to be able to sell Azure to that company? Because as soon as that COO has the statement of work on their desk and the contract, they're going to go, what? We're going to use AWS. I used to work there. My buddies still work there.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's so critical. Selecting your accounts with the social proximity, the sphere of influence mindset and strategies. We already went over why it's important. So the best places for the audience to start executing this strategy immediately. What would be your top 3 recommendations so that right when they're done reading this chapter, they can execute?
Executing this strategy, number 1, work with your team to identify every existing account that you have that has strong advocates and relationships. If you're an account executive and you don't have those relationships, but customer success does, that's not an excuse. Go get them. Number 2, acquire the data to help you identify people that are within that sphere of influence. And those data sets are examples, people that have left your customer base, competitors, vendors, partners, referral opportunities. And then now you need to fill in the gaps of the data. You need tools like yours to fill in emails, mobile information, social network information, because you'll eventually need to engage them. And then number 3, you're going to need to develop compelling stories to push people off their status quo. And it's got to be centered around that sphere of influence. You're going to tell the story of working with companies that highly correlate to these people's universe. And you're just going to rinse and repeat it.
Wow. Jaime Shanks, Sales for Life, my man, this has been fire. I'm so glad I didn't force us to not go over time, because this episode, like actionable strategies, tips, best practices, secrets, the whole way through. My man, where can the audience learn more, subscribe, connect with you, to follow your journey and to get as much value out of your content as possible?
Absolutely. Connect with me or follow me on LinkedIn. Number 2, go to Sales for Life. That's sales, FOR, life.com. And as well, you can pick up Spear Selling. It will be a great guide to help you on your journey.
Yeah, Spear Selling is amazing. It walks you through literally, again, how to select your accounts with a social proximity mindset, how to plan your plays with storyboards, how to engage your accounts with sales plays, how to activate your engaged accounts with tailored learning plays, and then how to run or replace your accounts. It's incredible. Thank you, Jaime, for joining us. And thank you, audience, for joining us for Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Pick up your copy of the book at secretsalesbook.com. That's secretsalesbook.com, secretsalesbook.com. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%. We release new episodes every Monday and Thursday, so make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube to never miss an episode.